I was born in Solapur, south of Maharashtra, but I never lived there. There probably for 3 years, my 3 years of my early age. Then I went to a town called Paithan, which is 50 kilometers from Aurangabad. I did until 10th, studied there, 2 years in Aurangabad, 11th and 12th. And then I went to Bombay for doing my chemical engineering graduation and post-graduation in IIT Powai.
Well, it's a very steep climb, as far as the education quality that you got. When was the first time you realized that you wanted to do this, that you wanted to do really well in school?
So this was all along. In fact, thankfully, and I don't know whether to thank it or not, and I'll say why. Because initial years of success sometimes can lead you to believe that you are different. All the while in my class, I was a topper, and that is thanks to God and thanks to the environment, the way I was brought up. And that continued until I reached the graduate engineering course, and then I realized, okay, I'm just one among the lot. I'm not necessarily the brightest. So it took until then to get the first ego levels coming down to figure out, okay, yeah, I understand a little bit, but that's not great.
But if you think back on your childhood, is it your parents, or did you know just inside that you had to do this well?
So this is a bit of both, and one of the reasons I would want to say is I would want to attribute is to the way we were brought up as kids. So we were allowed to question every decision, every knowledge, every aspect of things that were happening around in our house, including my dad saying that you should pray only when you believe in God. So there's a possibility to ask questions on every aspect of life, and with questioning you can get a lot more answers, and then you start questioning yourself. And that's the best one, when you start questioning yourself to realize, is this what you want? Is this it? Do you want to do something bigger? And then that sets you rolling. Until the first years you're questioning somebody else, but after some time you're questioning yourself, and that makes it interesting.
So the learning really begins in that way.
Yeah.
And if I ask you, you ended up having a very good career also. Could you recap a little bit about it and where you are today, please?
Sure. So after finishing my masters at IIT Powai, I joined Larsen and Toubro. As the saying, Mahajano yena gatasya pantaha. So wherever the toppers have joined, I want to join. That was one of the top paying companies. I'm talking way back in 1989. So I joined Larsen and Toubro. 3.5 years in Larsen and Toubro, understood a whole lot about designing something that is applied in the industry. From coming from colleges, which is mostly theoretical, getting into an applied knowledge, which was very interesting. But came in a turning point in 1991, when this was the time when IT industry in India started booming. That was the time in Indian economies were opened up. That was the time when our government had opened up for all export companies a bit of advantages for export companies. And that's when I started realizing that some of my colleagues have been shifting to IT industry. So 91 is when I shifted completely different field into business IT. I joined Tata Consultancy Services. So in 98 I switched to Infosys, back to Bangalore. So until this time I was in Bombay all the time, studies plus education plus work. And 1998 is when I shifted to Infosys. At Infosys, so TCS and Infosys journeys, if you look at, these were more of, you can also say right time at the right place, because IT growth was happening. But at the same time, being able to encash on the opportunities that you have, being able to realize the opportunities and encash on them. For instance, at Infosys, in 9 years, I was reporting to the board of Infosys in close to 9 years.
So let's say an opportunity comes up. You're working at Larsen and Toubro or Infosys or TCS or anywhere else. How do you know it's that type of area that you have to look at and say, this is what I have to focus on and do better? It's a defining moment. How do you know those defining moments?
So when you start realizing that you are not worried about whether it's a Saturday or a Sunday or a Monday, and this was one instance I could quote from Infosys Times, is I was running an Oracle applications practice, and I could very clearly see and say that I eat, sleep, run, and everything is Oracle. I eat Oracle, I sleep Oracle, I run, and then I realized that my whole world is only that. So I was so career focused, and my wife was another workaholic. So in fact, there were jokes around saying we meet at the airports, because she was working in a different company, I was working in a different company. So this lasted until this journey lasted. There was a moment when I started realizing that I'm fully into it, and that moment is what one needs to reach.
It becomes
to
part
get
of you.
to get to the full potential that you may have, and that is a very satisfying moment. And if you get there, that's fantastic. Then you're not worried about money, you're not worried about fame, you're not worried about power, if you will, because you are so many millions of dollars you are running for your company. It's just the fact that you're there and you are part of it, that's you're an integrated part of it, that makes it exciting.
I mean, is it only through opportunity that you see good things, or do you also see opportunity for your own definition of who you are as a professional? Is it only in good things, or can you see it in other ways?
So it's the understanding that you need to get on what is the area of freedom you have, what's the space for yourself, because everything in the organization, any organization, is extremely complex. You have multiple matrices of verticals and horizontals and technologies and business verticals and so on. If you have identified the space where either the organization is weak, where you can believe that you can make a difference, or simply that's the space given to you by your boss, and you have simply assumed it, okay, that's my area of work, that's my space, that's my freedom, and now using this area of freedom, using this space that you've got, if you can create a differentiator for yourself.
And how do you go?
This differentiator can be in terms of, let's say, simply larger businesses, larger teams. It can be profit margins by having productivity, by having different processes defined so that you can do something different, something better. Or it can simply be being innovative. So in that space, in that area of freedom, you have the largest patents and you are known for the knowledge that you have as an individual. It doesn't have to be a large team, it doesn't have to be revenue, it doesn't have to be anything. It can simply be you are known in that space in the whole world. So any of these dimensions of either larger business by volume, by margins, or the processes, the way you bring it to the customer is different, the process is different, the methodology is different, or the third angle as you are the most knowledgeable in that space. Any one of these, if you get going, if you work towards it, that's when you get this defining moment. That's when you get this moment of understanding, saying you are a part of it. And that's
Now, I wanted to ask you on the other side. I mean, not everything can go well.
Sure,
sometimes
sure,
mistakes happen.
sure.
Sometimes the management of you might come back and say, you didn't do this well.
Yeah.
How do you use that to make it so it's a benefit for your personal growth and professional growth?
Interestingly, I have also had to give a presentation to the senior board, senior management in one of the companies on saying why my particular project had 220% overrun. So it is not the best moment when you're the whole of the management is trying to listen and hear you out on what is your argument for being the worst project in the whole organization. On the other hand, when you have joined an organization new, which is an established organization, there are established players, there are people who are supposed to be the ones you to go to ask, your bosses will go to them to ask for solutions, opinions, and so on, and you are not the one. You get caught in these situations, and the only way to come out of these, or only way to master these areas, is to really get down to the details of it. There is nothing simpler than that. There is, people would talk about saying you should have better network, you should have better equations. I also have heard of a story. One of my bosses used to say, if it's the worst moment, if something has failed, people should blame the environment and not you. Then you have done your job better. But that may be one angle to it. But my view is you have to get down to the details. You have to understand the problem completely. And then you solve it part by part, get the whole picture, talk it out. And then people are ready to understand that this project could have been only 220%, let's say, more overheads. And how can I bring it back? How can I win this client back? How can I make bigger revenues out of there? Or, let's make it a referenceable client and so on. So this is a possibility only when you get down to the details and try to understand why did it fail or why did it succeed, also on the positive side.